Catherine Connolly.
Minister, my question follows on from the Court of Appeal striking down the government policy on a very narrow ground, albeit. And what is the status of the programme for government now of the commitment to ensure that inshore waters are protected for smaller fishing vessels and that pair trawling will be prohibited within the 6 mile limit?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. So, listen, my department and I continue to work on the commitment that we've set out in the programme for government on the banning of pair trawling inside the 6 mile limit is a matter of priority. As you're aware, in December 2018, following a public consultation process in which over 900 submissions were received, the Minister for Agriculture and Food and Marine announced that vessels over 18 metres would be excluded from trawling in inshore waters inside the 6 nautical mile zone from the 1st of January 2020, and there was a transition period then of 3 years allowed for over 18 metre vessels, which would have been targeting sprat before that, to enable them to adjust these vessels as the sprat fishery is concentrated primarily inside the 6 nautical mile zone. A policy directive was then issued on the back of that. I'm very much committed, Deputy Connolly, to the sustainability of fishing across our waters, and also very committed to the exclusion of vessels over 18 metres from trawling in the waters inside 6 nautical miles, in line with the commitment that we have in the programme for government as well. As stated in my reply to a PQ, the decision to exclude vessels of over 18 metres from trawling inside the 6 nautical mile zone was the subject, had been the subject of ongoing legal proceedings. A judicial review was taken to the High Court by 2 applicant fishermen. And on the 6th of October 2020, the judge of the High Court, in response to that, as part of the court's summary in advance of the final order, declared it void with no legal effect. I appealed then that decision to the High Court, or to the Court of Appeal, and they issued an unapproved judgment on July the 19th last year, and then they issued a final judgment just on the 10th of March past. So my team is now fully assessing that final judgment which we've received in relation then to taking the next necessary steps to follow through in our commitment to protecting the inshore sector inside the 6 nautical miles for the inshore sector.
Blunt reality is there's no protection. That's the blunt reality. And that was the blunt reality back in 2018-19, and 900 submissions, and people sufficiently engaged to say, please, and appeal to you to do something. You did something, fair play to you, that policy. It was set at naught by the Court of Appeal eventually. You know this for a very long time. You've given me the same background. My concerns remain acute in relation to the lack of protection for our inland waters and the unsustainable nature of the fishing going on. When will the policy be reinstated? It's very simple. I don't want any more background. I'm very familiar with it. The record is very familiar with it. Tá sé haram bartaí of de réir were bríher agus céimena a hógal chun an cosc na báid mhóra a chur rash agus stop a chur leis an rud atá ar siúl faoi láthair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Deputy Connolly. So listen, it wasn't possible to do anything until I'd received the final judgment. That's only been received just over a month ago. So, as I said to you, and it can't be any clearer, I and this government have a very strong commitment to working to protect that inside 6 nautical miles for smaller vessels and for the inshore sector, and to protect the sustainability of it. Nothing could be done until we receive the final judgment. We are now fully assessing that. It's going to be important in terms of the steps we take, that we're very deliberate and considered to make sure all of the required procedures are followed, because as we can see from what happened last time, and indeed from so many other instances, all that has to be found is one small item which can be challenged on for the whole procedure to be stopped. So there is now a procedure to re-establish this, which will have to be gone through. I will be working with my team to work to step that out, but there is no quick way of making an immediate decision, or simply, with a stroke of a pen doing something here. There's a very comprehensive procedure that legally has to be gone through to achieve this, Deputy Connolly, and that's very much evidenced by, the experience of the last 3 or 4 years, where the last
Minister.
decision was actually overturned by a court challenge.
I disagree with you, Minister. On every step of the procedure in the High Court and the Court of Appeal, they held with you. They said you were within your powers to bring in this policy. It was the right thing to do for conservation purposes. Every step of the way, the courts agreed with you. Unfortunately, the Department and the Government failed in their consultation process in relation to Europe and in relation to England. That's a vital piece of your obligation, that you communicate with Europe and you communicate with England in relation to the impact of this policy. You failed to do that. What is the result of your inquiry into the department as to how they failed to comply with their obligation that has now led to this debacle where the policy has been set at naught and there's absolutely no protection? You're on notice for a very long time that the government was running with you in relation to the nature of the policy and the objectives. The difficulty was simply in relation to your communication obligations that you failed to comply with. That's all. When do you see the policy up and running again?
Thank you, Deputy Minister, to conclude.
Well, first of all, so listen, I'm looking at the final court judgment to decide how we can step it out, Deputy Connolly. But listen, it was in a very, very narrow matter and very, very small matter in the context of everything that was done here in terms of the whole process that the judgment found against and in which it was overturned. And as you'll know, it's much, much easier to stop something than it is to actually achieve something. All it takes is one small matter, which is not the way it is decided it should be, in order for something to be stopped. So,
how did that happen, that they failed to communicate? Sorry.
Obviously, in this particular instance, and there would have been hundreds and hundreds, I've no doubt, of particular things that would have to be followed as part of the process. All that you have to find to strike it down is one small item, and in this particular instance, that's what happened here. There was massive commitment, massive time, effort put into actually the consultation process. I'm now assessing, because to be clear, my commitment and the government's commitment is to protecting the inside 6 nautical miles. I'm now assessing how we get to that position and how we actually achieve that.
Thank you, Minister. Moving on to our next